You won't believe what happened in our quiet neighborhood last week. It all started when my wife was just standing in our driveway, holding what she thought was a harmless prop for a video project. Suddenly, out of nowhere, this HOA Karen, the type who always seems to be watching everyone, decided she had enough. Without even asking questions, she called the cops, claiming my wife was waving a gun around. The tension skyrocketed instantly. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could something so simple spiral out of control so fast? But that's exactly what happened. Within minutes, the police showed up, sirens blaring, and the atmosphere shifted from calm to chaotic. The neighbors were all watching, whispering, wondering what was going on. My wife tried to explain, but the situation quickly got out of hand. This isn't just a story about an HOA dispute or a misunderstanding. It's about how quickly assumptions and fear can lead to serious consequences. It's about people being judged before they've even had a chance to speak. And it's about how one person's rush to judgment can change everything in an instant. I'm not here to pick sides or stir up trouble, but you need to hear what really went down, because it's not as simple as it sounds. There's more beneath the surface. And it's important to understand how these situations can escalate so fast in today's world. And just when you think the story is clear, something shocking happens, something no one saw coming. 30 seconds. After the cops arrived, my wife was being handcuffed and taken away. What led to that? What did the police actually see? And how did an innocent moment turn into a nightmare? Stay with me as I break down every detail of this unbelievable event. You won't want to miss what happens next before all this chaos unfolded. Our neighborhood was just like any other peaceful community: quiet streets, friendly faces, and a shared sense of respect. My wife and I had lived here for years, always, trying to keep to ourselves and enjoy our little slice of calm. But you know how sometimes, no matter how careful you are, drama finds its way in. That's exactly what happened. The HOA, which is supposed to help keep things orderly, sometimes feels more like a watchdog with too much power and not enough understanding. And Karen, well, she's definitely the kind of person who takes her job of keeping watch a bit too seriously. On that day, my wife was working on a video for a hobby project. She had a prop, something that looked like a gun but wasn't real. It was part of a scene she wanted to film for a short story she's been developing. She had no idea that someone nearby was already watching her, ready to jump to conclusions. From what we later found out, Karen spotted her from across the street and immediately started dialing. No hello or can you explain? Just a quick call, reporting a possible threat. The minutes leading up to the police arrival felt surreal. My wife was standing there, confused but calm, hoping this would clear up quickly. But once the officers pulled up, everything changed. Their approach was cautious but firm. Neighbors peeked out their windows, some recording with their phones, others just trying to understand what was going on. I remember feeling frozen, worried about what they'd see, how they'd react. What happened next felt like a whirlwind. Questions were asked, explanations given, but the tension never eased. The officers seemed unsure, caught between what they were told and what they saw. And then, out of nowhere, everything escalated in a way none of us expected. There's more to this story than meets the eye. The deeper you look, the more complicated it gets. And the truth, it's not as clear-cut as that one phone call made. It seemed as the minutes dragged on, the situation grew more tense than I ever expected it could in our quiet neighborhood. The officers kept circling around, asking questions, but never really seeming convinced. My wife stood there, trying to stay calm, but I could see the frustration and fear building behind her eyes. She was being treated like a threat, even though all she wanted was to explain and clear things up. It felt like everything was spiraling out of control. And no one was really listening. Karen's presence only made things worse. She hovered nearby, watching every move, making sure the officers saw the danger she claimed was right in front of them. Her words carried weight with the HOA and some neighbors, and that seemed to influence the police more than it should. I couldn't help but wonder, was this about safety, or was it about control? About who gets to decide what's normal and what's suspicious? Neighbors started gathering, some filming on their phones, others whispering anxiously. The air was thick with anticipation and uncertainty. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next, but no one wanted to get involved. I felt a mix of anger, helplessness, and disbelief all at once. Suddenly, one of the officers asked my wife to put the prop down. She complied, but that only seemed to heighten the tension. The officers exchanged looks, communicating without words, and I could tell they were trying to figure out their next move. There was a silence that felt heavier than anything before it, like the calm before a storm. And then, in a moment that none of us expected, everything changed. The officers moved quickly, hands reaching out, voices firm but hurried. What had started as a misunderstanding was now turning into something much more serious. Something that would leave everyone stunned and questioning what really happened that day. The calm neighborhood we knew was shattered, and there was no turning back. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any worse, a new twist flipped everything upside down. As the officers were moving to take control, one of them suddenly pulled out a phone and started speaking quietly into it. I caught a few words, something about a callback and additional units. My heart sank. It felt like this was no longer just about a simple misunderstanding or a neighborhood complaint. It had escalated into something far more serious and complicated. To make matters more confusing, a neighbor stepped forward, claiming they had seen something different entirely. According to them, there had been an argument earlier that day near our house, something that no one had mentioned before. Suddenly, whispers of possible threats, old grudges, and hidden tensions surfaced. It was as if this incident had opened a door to layers of conflict nobody knew existed in our supposedly peaceful community. The officers' attitude shifted noticeably. They seemed less willing to hear explanations and more focused on controlling the scene. The weight of the HOA complaint combined with this new information was pushing them into a corner, forcing decisions that none of us were ready for. My wife, once just confused and frustrated, now looked scared. I could see the fear creeping into her voice as she tried to stay calm and cooperative. But the situation was slipping further out of her control. The neighbors who had gathered were growing restless. Phones were raised, voices hushed, and the tension became almost unbearable. It felt like the entire block was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The conflict wasn't just about a gun anymore, it was about trust, judgment, and how quickly a peaceful day could turn into a nightmare. And then, just as the officers started to take more serious action, a sudden interruption threw everything into chaos. A call, a shout, something that no one saw coming. The stakes had never been higher, and the truth was still buried beneath layers of confusion. What happened next would change everything. Just as the tension hit its peak, the officers suddenly moved in. They carefully but firmly placed my wife in handcuffs, telling her she was being taken in for questioning. The neighbors gasped, some yelling out in disbelief, others still filming every moment. My heart pounded as I rushed forward, desperate to explain that the gun was a harmless prop, part of a video project with no real threat involved. But the officers, bound by procedure and the HOA complaint, had to follow their orders. Then came the moment that changed everything. While one officer was reviewing the prop, a call came through on the radio, an urgent update from dispatch. It turned out the original report had been based on mistaken identity. The real threat had been someone else entirely, someone who had left the area before the cops arrived. The prop my wife held was completely harmless, just as she said. In an instant, the mood shifted. The officers began to remove the cuffs, apologizing quietly for the misunderstanding. The neighbors, too, started to murmur their surprise and relief. Karen, who had called the cops, looked caught off guard, her confident stance faltering for the first time. But just when it seemed like the storm was over, an unexpected voice broke through the crowd. Another neighbor stepped forward, revealing that Karen had a history of escalating minor issues into big problems. Some said she had personal grudges and that her complaints were often exaggerated. This revelation sent ripples through the neighborhood, casting doubt on how much power one person should have over the community's safety and peace. My wife and I stood there, shaken but relieved. Knowing this wasn't just about one day or one call. It was about how fear and assumptions can spiral out of control and impact real lives. As the officers packed up to leave, we realized this story was far from over. The questions about trust, judgment, and community responsibility were only beginning, and the consequences of that day would echo long after the cameras stopped rolling. After the officers left, the neighborhood slowly returned to its usual calm, but something had changed. The incident with the HOA Karen calling the cops on my wife wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It had exposed cracks in how we all interact and judge each other. My wife and I spent the rest of the day talking with neighbors, many of whom expressed sympathy and frustration at how quickly assumptions can lead to serious consequences. We realized that living in a community means balancing safety and respect, but also understanding that fear can sometimes make people act without thinking. Karen's quick call wasn't just about protecting the neighborhood. It was a reminder of how suspicion and snap judgments can harm innocent people. We didn't want to dwell on anger, but we knew that this experience had to be a lesson for all of us. Communication and empathy are key to avoiding unnecessary conflicts. The HOA itself agreed to review their policies after the incident, promising better ways to handle concerns without rushing to involve the police at the first sign of trouble. It felt like a step in the right direction. Meanwhile, my wife continued her video project, now with a new story to tell, one inspired by what we had been through. Looking back, this whole experience showed us how easily misunderstandings can escalate, especially when fear and mistrust are involved. It's a reminder that before jumping to conclusions, it's important to listen, ask questions, and give people a chance to explain. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If there's one thing to take away, it's that behind every quick call or complaint is a human being with fears and flaws, but also hopes for understanding. Let's remember that as we live and grow together in our communities.